Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1973-74-5-6 Carryover League Offseason Edition, Part 1. This is where we start, folks. The first part of the offseason, where we have put together the draft order. Again, the draft order is the fourth place teams in 8 divisions. And then after that, the next 12 teams that didn't make the playoffs, and then the playoff teams, with the caveat that winning percentage, you don't want more than 2 consecutive teams in the same league, between the American League and National League. So if there's a third team in either league, I will skew the order slightly. Not much manipulation was required to do that, so it's pretty straightforward, worst to first kind of thing. Going all the way down to Oakland, the world champs, team 32. Next thing we determine here is the number of players a team wants to keep, put on waivers, and retire, indicated by a code here. First digit is keep, the middle digit is waivers, and the far right digit is retirements. And everybody desires a number of 40202. 4, 2, and 2. So these are all inputted in. These are protected, should be, I think. Well, they're all protected cells there. And in this process, we start an off season of making moves, trade offers, so forth, starting with the first team to get down to the bottom. So without further ado, tonight we're just going to look at the first 8 teams. This is not complete. This is just the first stage. So this is the first steps that these teams are going to act this off season. We also have notes of who they will keep. Don't know which year they'll keep them in. Don't even know if they'll keep them. They might still trade them. But these are just tentative players they might keep. We have a wish list comment section here. And the trading block, guys, that team wants to put on the trading block, hopefully to interest others. We're going to start with Ohio here. So we'll go up to, in this sheet, we have this indicator here. They had 6 guys, and they want to keep, and only 2 retirements, so they need some waivers. And then this is the fixing that has gone on, so we'll check them out as well. And the fixing, it was only that they moved Jackie Hernandez as a keeper, realizing that he wasn't very good. They just moved him on the waivers as the first step. And they also have Daryl Thomas in the trading block. They can't start an off season this way. They're in the waiting pool. See if anybody wants to talk to them about Daryl Thomas. So that's what the Ohio players have done. The other interesting move with the Ohio players, believe it or not, Vida Blue might be the first pick in the draft again, because they did not have access to the 1976 card. And 76 is a beautiful year for Mr. Blue. He's got a 2.30 ERA and a 1.10 WHIP. And that is a 4-year contract, and that will probably be the first overall pick in the draft for this expansion team, 2 years in a row. Consider last year as a 1-year deal. All right, next team up is St. Louis. St. Louis did nothing. They decided they're going to keep Gibson, Curtis, Ted Sizemore, and between Steve Barber and Sonny Siebert, you get more value out of a left-handed reliever like Steve Barber, so Siebert's on the trade block. But otherwise, not much movement. Next up, the Yankees. They started the offseason with just 3 keepers, 2 waivers, 3 retirements. It was just Mercer, Nettles, and Lyle. They had no current players who threw left-handed. Lyle as a keeper, plus waivers on, or retirement on Mike Kekich. We'll look at this. Show you their little path here. 1, 2, 3. You see they had Kekich on retirement and Luke Walker, the other lefty, on waivers. So the Yankees made a deal. Big move here. This is the first big trade on the trade carousel. Here we have Jackie Hernandez being put on waivers. But in this nice little 3-team trade here, the Giants send Mike Marshall temporarily to the Yankees from a retired player, Mike Kekich. And the Giants are no dummies. They know pretty quickly that the Yankees are just going to flip Mike Marshall to the Dodgers. So they ask for 2 tokens, and of course, who has more money than the Yankees? They get 2 draft tokens from the Yankees for Mike Marshall. The Yankees then recoup one of those tokens by sending Mike Marshall to the Dodgers for a lefty starter, Claude Osteen. And that will be the lefty starter until Ron Guidry shows up and Tommy John shows up later in the decade and all the other lefties. But right now, the Yankees are short on left-handed starting pitching. So Claude Osteen, he's solid guy. So, yeah, he'll be in the front of the rotation with Mel Stottlemyre and who was the guy they got from, Doc Medich. So that was a nice 3-team trade. On their wish list, they're thinking about 1976 is when Willie Randolph comes aboard. So the Yankees are properly comported now at 40202. Next up, Florida Marlins. Unfortunately for Florida, they only had 2 keepers, 3 waivers, 3 retirements, so they made 2 deals. Costs to make deals. They retired a retired Vic Davalillo to Cleveland for Vada Pinson, who still has a few years left. It's going to cost them a token, though, when you get a retired player for a player who has potential. And the White Sox had too many keepers, and Florida was able to pluck Luis Aparicio off their list for a guy, Celerino Sanchez, who the White Sox are going to put on waivers. White Sox turned Luis Aparicio into some currency. They have no practical use for him anymore. With his range gone and Bucky Dent on the team, they'll look elsewhere to find a platoon mate for Bucky Dent, and they get $1 draft token. So what does that do for Florida, Cleveland, and the White Sox? Well, look up here again. Florida now comports at 40202. Cleveland started at 50201. They're at 40202. And the White Sox, way down here, started at 7001. Now they're 60101. So they still have 2 guys they like to trade rather than put on waivers. That includes possibly Carlos May or Tom Bradley. Or Stan Bonson, though Stan Bonson has the brightest future if you want to hold on to him. He turns to a nice reliever later in the decade. So that's the moves through Florida and their help. Seattle and the Dodgers helped each other out perfectly. In a very we get these trades a lot, folks. The Reds and the Yellows. Wavered player for retired player, no compensation, even though their value is different, just because neither player is going to impact either team. They're just helping each other's accounting. The accountants of the Dodgers and the accountants of Seattle helped each other out. And when you look at the overall net there, Seattle goes from 503 to 50102. All they have to do is decide between Jerry Bell and Dick Woodson. Who do they want to keep and who do they want to put on waivers? And the Dodgers, after making the move for Marshall, they're at 40202 with Sutton, Brewer, Bill Russell, and now Mike Marshall. They still want to make a trade for Jim Wynn, who's an active player. That'll be done a little bit differently. And then next up, the Twins. Twins stood pat as well. 50201, they stayed the same. Blyleven, Kotz, and Goltz are all Twins. Reichert was not, but he's a left-handed reliever, and like Steve Barber up ahead, teams don't like to deal or trade or barter their left-handed relievers very frequently. So for right now, Barber is staying in St. Louis, and Reichert's staying in Minnesota until a better offer comes along. Harmon Killebrew is sitting out there for the Twins, and frankly, he'll sign, but I don't think anyone's going to actually make a deal. They'll probably have him be a left-handed DH. We're going to see probably Harmon Killebrew and Willie Mays, Hall of Famers, in the golden final stages of their careers, try and pick up a World Series ring for some contender somewhere. And then Portland. This is an exciting move. They were somewhat in trouble. They had 2 keepers, 2 waivers, and 4 guys in retirement. So if you really want to get keepers, you're going to have to dig into the active roster and offer something tantalizing. And they did, folks, to Houston. Check this trade out. This is the final trade of the day. Here we go. Portland sends Frank Robinson's active card of 73, 2 retired pitchers, Don Durham and John Strohmeyer, to Houston for active player Danny Cater, who hits 308, and 2 keeper pitchers, Clay Kirby and Dick Bosman. And actually, I'm thinking Portland may have fleeced Houston here. Portland also gets a draft token because, well, Frank Robinson's in the Hall of Fame. So Houston paid a big price, and if you're wondering why did Houston pay all this for aging Frank Robinson, well, I mentioned earlier Jim Wynn, the left fielder. They're going to trade him in the this offseason, to the Dodgers for Joe Ferguson. So they need left field help until Jose Cruz shows up. So right now it looks like it's going to be Frank Robinson, Cesar Cedeno, and Wilbur Howard in the Houston outfield. But that should be fun. A slugger in Houston. Frank Robinson, another team in a suitcase. Traveled well at the end of his career. Made lots of stops. And we're putting him in Houston. There were other options for Frank, but they just didn't fit. A return to Baltimore didn't make sense. Cincinnati had no room in their outfield. Cleveland didn't have any room in their outfield either. So it had to be a new team. And teams that trade for Frank Robinson have had great fortune. So maybe that portends well for the Astros. So with this neat little fix for Portland, they suddenly have, well, it's not like the riches. I mean, they have, at least they have guys to keep now. They have Ray Corbin, Clay Kirby, Dick Bosman, and Ray Bear. Not a shining group, but at least they have guys to add to their roster. And they're at 40202. And with that one move, Houston is at 40103 because they're still going to keep Cedeno, Doug Rader, Larry Durker, catcher Johnny Edwards. They got the guy on their wish list, Frank Robinson. And so now it's only a matter of trading Jimmy Wynn, who was in left field, to the Dodgers for catcher Joe Ferguson. Dodgers have a bonus catcher. They got Steve Yeager and Joe Ferguson. And they already parted ways with Claude Osteen, who the Astros were not interested in. So that's 8 teams. We'll pause there. We'll pick it up with another 8 next time. And, you know, we're getting closer here. You see that anytime you see like a 50102, if you don't have anybody talking to you, the phone's not ringing, you take that 5th wheel and you stick them on waivers. It's mostly about getting the retired guys out of retirement and the keepers. So this is installment number 1 of the 1973-76 off season. Thanks for checking this out, folks, and we'll see you next time.